From the official television station of Illini Sports, this is the CEFU Your Illini Nation Kickoff Show.
Welcome into a unique edition of the WCIA 3 Plus, Your Illini Nation, a kickoff show for the 3-in-1 pod.
Kickoff pod.
Not to be confused with our on-air on WCIA television airwaves.
Yeah, we'll promote that one later.
Kickoff show, that will come at a later date, much closer to actual kickoff. But we wanted to get you a different version. Now that we got the app, we have a space for this where you can watch it, and hopefully this and our actual kickoff show provide unique value. They'll be very different.
They will, but I think we're through enough of camp, having gone through a week or so of camp as we record this. I think we're at a good enough place where we can really start to get into the nitty-gritty of this season and what it looks like, especially when you're looking at a season that is so hyped up.
Absolutely. The Illini are ranked number 12 in the preseason AP poll. First top 15 ranking for Illinois in the preseason poll since 1990. First ranking of any kind in the preseason poll since 2008.
Just incredible. I feel so, number one, so happy for people like our friend Robert Rosenthal, who have been with this program through thick and thin. But number two, to see this come to fruition for Brett Bielema after the years he's put in here, to see this come to fruition for Josh Whitman, just really says a lot about that decision and what Bielema has done here in just a few short years.
Absolutely. What we're going to do here is play off a little bit of the WCIA 3, and we're going to get you 3 position groups that we feel could be really, really strong this year. We're going to get you 3 position groups that we have question marks about this year. And I want to make this clear. That's not we're saying those are the weakest 3 position groups.
We just have questions.
They could end up being some of the stronger ones. They're ones that maybe we don't know for sure yet. And quite honestly, a lot of that, and not to spoil our 3, but are probably positions where there's new there because it's the uncertainty. Again, not the this is a weak spot, but this is a spot where we're saying, is it strong?
Well, when you return so much in some rooms, it's hard not to look at the other rooms and have questions.
Right.
So 3 questions.
Yeah, and then we'll get you 3 of the games that we think are some of the biggest on the schedule for the Illini this fall. Let's start with our 3. We picked out the position groups together, and then the games we did separately.
Yes.
We'll start with our 3. Should we start with the strong?
I think we have to start strong.
Okay.
And the first group that we agreed on to start with our strongest is the defensive backs room. You return 5 incredible playmakers in, I love to call them the Scott brothers, even though they're not the Scott brothers. Matt Bailey, Caleb Patterson, and Torrey Cox. Not to mention the guys that we've seen jump out in camp. Me personally, I've seen Jaheim Clark just dominate camp. Plus, you're led by what I think will go down as one of the best hires in college football at Corey Parker. So no questions at that DB room. So excited to see what they continue to do. Keep passing that mayhem belt around and keep making plays.
Yeah, you're talking about Jaheim Clark, you mentioned, who kind of got tested last year. DB is a difficult position to play because when teams feel like they got a leg up on you, they're going to try to expose you. They're going to go right at you over and over and over and say, this guy can't stop our guy. And there was times where teams tried to do that last year. And he made some great plays because of it. He probably got burned a couple times because of it. And I think he grew a ton through that. And an emphasis for the Illini have been taking the ball away. I feel like we can't get through the kickoff special without hearing from Corey Parker. So let's listen in here. I asked Corey Parker about taking the ball away, getting those turnovers, whether it's interceptions or forced fumbles or whatever. And here's what he said on that topic.
The best thing to do when you're trying to, get guys to want to go after the football is get guys that want the ball, right? So recruiting is a piece to it, right? Your Jimmies and your Joes are a large piece of it. Ultimately, having a defensive scheme like what Coach Aaron Henry runs to give the guys the opportunity to get their eyes on the ball is important. And then it's the subject matter expertise, right? The drills, the constant push of understanding of we want to create turnovers here, and this is why. But not just leaving the why out there. You have to create hows every single day of this is the way and there's a way, right? And that's what you want to always give a player. The way, but there's also a way of doing things too. So now they have a creative understanding of what their body type and skill set allows them to do versus that concept, that route, and how they can get their hands on the ball and make a play in the defense all at the same time, because sometimes you can take a risk and the reward is high, but you can take a risk and also that reward was very, very low and you can hurt the other 10 guys on the field. So you got to be careful about the way that you teach it and make sure they got a full understanding of what they're doing, why they're doing it, ultimately how.
Another guy we didn't mention would be Mac Rossetich, who maybe hasn't gotten like as much playing time. He's gotten like a fair amount, but he's playing, I don't even want to say behind, but with some really, really good football players. I think he's a guy they absolutely believe can go out there and make plays. There's just some other really good guys in that group, which makes maybe his time somewhat limited, but I think they believe he's ready to go, and I think we'll see a lot of him on the football
And that's where you can just hope he is, like I said, Jaheim Clark, you just have to hope that he is waiting in the wings, getting the practice reps in and ready for when his time does come.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. Let's talk about the offensive line, another group that we think is going to be really strong this year. Anytime you return 5 starters from the bowl game which you beat a top 10, top 15 SEC team that really thought they should have been in the playoff. I mean, that's a big deal to return all 5 of those offensive linemen. That's a group, I think if there's a group that you want chemistry in, certainly your quarterback and your receivers might be one of them, but your O-line, when those guys can communicate without even talking or know sometimes unspoken stuff of like, if he steps this way, that means he needs me to do this, and he doesn't have to say, this stuff doesn't have to be memorized. It's just they've been around each other for long enough that this stuff is like the back of their hand.
And you mentioned chemistry. I think we can say, we all saw Luke Altmaier in his O-line shirts last year. I think we can say, from having experienced it, spoken to Luke, spoken to the O-line, that wasn't just a PR stunt.
Right. No, he loves his O-line.
The trust he has in them and the protection they have over him is palpable. And that's going to happen when you're returning the likes of Gabe Akis, J.C. Davis, Melvin Priestley, all of those guys. I mean, you can't not look at that O-line and feel pretty confident, especially when you look at who they're protecting.
No, that's a great point. I mentioned their chemistry with each other, but their chemistry with Luke or the running backs is maybe as important, of knowing like if Luke's pivoting this way, he might not be running yet. He might still throw. Or maybe, he's taking off. I got to get downfield with him. Like knowing what he's doing and what he's thinking and those calls and stuff like that, and having gone through some stuff. Like I remember being at that Penn State game last year when it was so loud, the whiteout energy, it was so loud that Luke had to go up to each of his guys on the O-line and like yell into their ears individually. That wasn't fun. They had a bad snap at the goal line on the 2-yard line that they ended up not scoring on that possession in a huge moment of the game. That was not fun. You go through that stuff, and then the next year that you come back and you've been through the highs, certainly the highs of just running the ball against Michigan almost all game and saying, you can't stop us here, we're going to do it. And the lows of stuff like that Penn State game. Let's hear from a couple of those O-linemen.
The trust we have with each other. I really trust Croops. I look up to Croops. I look up to JC and Waze and vice versa. And that just means a lot. And a bonus to that, we have barbecues. They come over to our house. Like, it's just not no football thing with us. Like, this is like real brotherhood.
Talked about those returning 5 starting offensive linemen. We should also mention some of the depth pieces there. Brandon Hansen has gotten a lot of praise throughout camp. I think he's a guy they believe is coming along nicely. You also added another pair of brothers. We got a lot of brothers.
I love that. I think there's several pairs of brothers on this team. It's fun.
I'll forget some of them. I think there might be 5. Off the top of my head, you have the Scotts, Torrey Cox and his brother, I think it's Tywan Cox, and then these 2 transfers who are both newcomers but brothers, the Knappich brothers on the offensive line, play the same position. And you have the Clements. So I'm sorry to the one pair of brothers that I'm missing.
Sorry, guys.
I got I think 4 of the 5 with Clement playing opposite side of the ball there. But Brandon Hansen's gotten a lot of praise. You have the Knappichs. We'll see what that depth looks like. And quite honestly, that can be a challenge because you have 5 guys that have played so much football, but that sometimes means the guys behind them haven't played so much football. The transfers they got in that group would kind of be the exception to that rule. They have played a lot of football, maybe not here.
Well, and it's when you look at this schedule, you have opportunities like Western Illinois early to get those guys out on the field.
Right, absolutely.
Under the lights at Memorial Stadium. That's a good test for them. I would be shocked if we see a guy like Gabe Akis play more than 3 quarters.
That's a perfect segue to our next position group our third. We're doing 3s here in case you missed the start of the show. We're doing 3s. Our third group that we feel like is a strong one for Illinois is the linebackers group, and starts with the guy that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen, go over to Glenn's Twitter and see. Glenn got a shot of Gabe Akis where he's a big
He looks
human.
like a player that you build on a video game.
Literally. And something I'm personally really excited about, Dylan Rosiak got an injury. When
Absolutely.
he went down during that Minnesota game, I was actually in some insider baseball. The area that connects the locker room and the field is where we can set up
Our work
computers
room
and
and
work.
stuff, yeah.
I was in there when he reunited with his mom and I assume girlfriend. Devastating.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see
Yeah.
him back on the field.
No, absolutely. Dylan's a guy, Dylan's one of the guys that typically would end up doing media after a loss. And that's like, they don't let anybody do that, nor do a lot of guys probably want to do that. And Dylan would be. And he was and is a leader of this football team and just flies around the field.
Yeah.
Really. Gabe, gets to the quarterback a ton and is incredibly valuable. Dylan, it feels like maybe he doesn't have the sack numbers, but it feels like he's all over the place. And maybe he makes some plays that he stops it's an 8-yard gain and he stops it from being 15. You know what I mean? Or, he had a big sack. I think he had the overtime stop. I don't remember if it was Nebraska or Purdue. I think he had at least one of those. But he made some big plays, and I think we could see another step up in his game too. Malachi Hood is back in that group. He had a really strong finish to the season with that Northwestern
And I've seen him
game.
looking really good in camp so
Yeah,
far.
he looked great in that Northwestern game. Kaneda Odeluga has shown some big games. I think maybe it was Michigan State that he had a really big game against. So you have guys who have made plays in that room. And then you add a guy like Leon Lowry, one of the 3 transfers they got from Wisconsin, who has played some valuable football and has shown that he can do a lot of good things. And so they return a lot, but they don't just return guys in that room. They added some guys in. We're going to take a break here. We will be right back, and then we will get you into those 3 position groups that we have some questions about, maybe that we don't know as much about, that we're going to be that we've really been locked in on throughout fall camp.
Exactly.
And we'll really probably be locked on in week 1 to see what those groups look like. All right, welcome back. It's the Your Illini Nation WCIA 3-in-1 podcast with a unique edition, kind of our 3-in-1 plus
3-in-1
kickoff
on
show.
site.
Absolutely, yeah. We're right here out in front of Memorial Stadium as we wait for the Illini to get there for game day, August 29th against Western Illinois. We're sticking with 3s here, and we got you our 3 position groups that we feel like could be potentially the strongest for Illinois. Only time will tell. 3 groups that we have questions about, and the first one, Courtney, is probably obvious. You might be tired of hearing us talk about it, but when you lose a Pat Bryant who broke a school record for single-season touchdowns, and you lose a Zachary Franklin, you're going to wonder how you replace that.
Yes. Enter Justin Stepp.
Right.
What we've heard from Justin Stepp all camp is that there's no reason to break glass. There's no reason to get too worried. We all love Pat and love Zachary, but there's a lot of talent behind them. Now, one of the things I'm most excited about in the wideout room, not a returner, Justin Bowick transferring in from Ball State. I had the opportunity to meet him at Luke Altmaier's QB camp over at STM. Great guy who's looking really strong in camp. My only question there is, how do you translate Ball State football to playing here?
Right. Yeah. Certainly going from a different level. No offense to the MAC, but
Love the MAC.
you're going to a different level of football, a different level of DBs that you're lining up against. Illinois has a very unique mix in this room, and we've heard Luke Altmaier talk about it. He's been pretty honest. Like, he said he thinks it could be the deepest group that he's had since he got here. I think the coaches have said that as well. Now they have also said that's great, and this is something Tristan and I talked about on the podcast last week. But sometimes you need a game breaker. So you might have 10 really good receivers. Sometimes you need an unbelievable receiver.
Right.
A guy that you say, last year, let's be honest, there was times where it felt like Illinois said, hey, here's the deal. We have Pat Bryant and you don't, so we win. Right? Like, it was as simple as that.
And it wasn't necessarily wrong in that regard.
No, it worked, right? Like, sometimes it helps to have a guy like that. Now, it also helps to have 6, 7 guys, whatever it may be, to where they can't say, all right, they're going to this guy. It's 3rd and 8. They're going to throw the ball to Pat Bryant, right? They can't say that. They're like, are they going to this guy? Or there's a number of guys. So we're talking about Justin Bowick. We're talking about Hudson Clement, the transfer in from West Virginia. Malik Elzy had a touchdown week 1 against EIU, and really showed flashes of making great play. I think he could absolutely have a bigger role. You're talking about Capka Jones, Colin Dixon, right?
I've been really impressed with Colin Dixon in camp. I've seen several flashes from him. Also Hank Beatty.
Hank Beatty, absolutely.
We're expecting to see him.
I think Hank Beatty was an underrated asset last year for Illinois in that he made a few big catches. Maybe he didn't have the game-winning touchdown that Pat had. He may have had the third down conversion right before it that even got that being possible, right? That wide receiver room is an interesting one. We're kind of waiting to see who is the go-to guy, or maybe it's different. Maybe it is, hey, we had 3 last-second game winners again like we did last year, but it was 3 different guys.
Something I'm hearing a lot throughout camp is that a lot of these decisions of who's starting, who's lining up in this moment, not only are going to be game time decisions, but are going to be very flexible game time decisions, and not from a place of uncertainty, from a place of like versatility. You have lots of guys with lots of different skills. I've heard that in multiple rooms, and that's something I think that is especially going to manifest in the wide receiver room.
Yeah. While we're talking pass catchers, another group that will be interesting to see how it plays out is the tight end room, a position that Illinois used last year, certainly threw the ball to their tight ends, but you had a guy go down with a season-ending injury. That's going to change things, and I think they would tell you, but they didn't have a tight end that was maybe a nightmare to game plan for.
Right.
That they said, how on earth are we going to shut this guy down? You know what I mean? And so Tanner Arkin comes back with a ton of experience. He's a leader of this football team, and he's a guy that has proven he can make plays. I mean, you talk about Nebraska. He had some really big plays in that Nebraska game. There was a Tanner Arkin drive, I think it was dubbed, where they just found him over and over.
Right.
And then you add in a guy who was out last year who I think Illinois fans and Illinois coaches and players think is a pretty dang good football player.
I think Cole Rust is going to be, like, scary. I think the buildup of having to wait after getting hurt literally, like, right before the season began last season, I think he can be really scary in a good way for Illinois fans.
It's an interesting group there at the tight ends. We'll see. They also added Christian Abney, Davin Stoffel. So there's other faces in that room that we may not know enough about right now, and we might get 2 weeks in and saying, oh, hold on a minute. We didn't talk about this guy for the last month, but we should have been.
Again, these aren't questions that we have from a place of doubt. These are questions that we want answers.
Yeah.
We want to see what the Illini come up with.
And as I said before, these groups could end up being strengths. I don't want this to come off as the weakest groups. In fact, if you think about it, the other teams that are game planning for these groups that we're talking about right now, they may not know who exactly is coming after them in the wide receiver room, who exactly they need to pay the most attention to.
Right.
Okay, which tight end is their blocking tight end? Which tight end is their pass catching tight end? We know that Cole has an elite ability of pass catching, but Tanner Arkin caught a lot of passes too, right? And so there is no, okay, this guy's in, they're running it. This guy's in, they're going deep. Like, no, I think the goal is that they can all do it all, and that can be a hard thing to prepare for.
Right, and if I can go ahead and take us into our third and final group we have questions about, because you said we have questions about these groups, but they could jump out and be game-changing.
As journalists, we have questions for everybody.
Sure.
We're always asking
Comes
questions.
with the territory. But Aaron Henry thinks his defensive line can jump out and be one of those groups that is game-changing. He says one of the strongest groups on the field. Still a group we have questions about. You lose a bit. You lose quite a bit. But you bring in not just, again, all up to the MAC. You bring in Power 4.
Right. The couple Wisconsin guys in that group.
Tomiwa from Florida State, and then Kurt Neal and James Thompson Jr. from Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's probably the group they hit the portal hardest on. That, and then probably bringing in Clement and Bowick in the wide receiver room would fall under the same category. But that is a group that they hit the portal, and they knew they had a lot to replace there. You return Gentle Hunt. T.Y. Edwards does not get his waiver approved. I think James Thompson Jr., man, you talk about Gabe Akis, but James is a large human.
He is. And we spoke to him the other day, and he had great things to say about his time here so far.
Yeah, he's a confident guy. I think he's getting settled in. Let's go ahead and hear from James Thompson Jr. because he's a fun guy to talk to.
That D-line group, that's what I'm saying. It's like a Swiss Army knife. You can bring speed, you can bring power, you can bring both, you can bring balance. Like, there's so many different guys you can plug in that position here at Illinois that could really do a good job at impacting the defense.
All right, another thing we should note on that D-line, and we mentioned it with the wide receivers group with Justin Stepp, but a coach who gets a ton of praise in Terrence Jamison. I think Brett Bielema has straight up said before he thinks he's the best D-line coach in America.
Yeah.
And so if there's a group that you feel good about just saying, I don't care who we got in there, as long as they're coached by this guy, they'll be all right, that might be the group that you give them that benefit of the doubt. Follow us into this break. On the other side of this, we'll talk about a little bit about the schedule and some games that feel significant to us. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about the schedule a little bit. Illinois has, I I don't know how to explain it because I think that maybe people have looked at it and said, oh, they got a favorable schedule in the Big Ten. And in a way, sure, like they don't play Michigan, they don't play Penn State, they don't play Oregon. But there's a lot of games on there that I think are sneakily not easy.
And
right?
not just here, but on the road. I mean, life on the road in the Big Ten,
Right.
you've got some challenges.
Absolutely. There's a number of games that you could circle. Illinois goes on the road in non-conference play to take on the Blue Devils. Courtney and I came up with these lists separately.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it,
We
but
didn't talk about it until basically we were hitting record here.
great minds think alike, I guess. You know, this is an early Power 4 road test. This is your first chance after, again, Western Illinois, Brett Bielema's #1 game on the schedule. This is your first chance to really show, this is such a cliche, but to show the world who this Illinois team is. Duke has threatened in recent years in the ACC. The ACC is no joke, and they have shown themselves. So to go down there early in the season, I think is going to answer a lot of our questions that we talked about in our last block.
It's a huge game. That early for confidence, and I don't think the team would by any means hit the panic button if you have a loss, but thoughts creep in.
Sure.
And it certainly could be a loss that instead of building confidence, it might tear it down. Or maybe, if the pass game doesn't get going, then you say, well, maybe it is a big deal that we lost Pat. There are factors where you go down there, you take care of business against a power conference team, and you say, boom, last year was not a fluke. You know what I mean? This was not, we didn't, because you could take, you could say, well, they had Pat Bryant last year, or, well, they won a lot of close games last year. They snuck by a few of them. They had to win in overtime. And so you go down there and you feel confident, and it doesn't hurt. I mean, you're talking about all it takes is a couple teams losing for Illinois to be a top 10 team after week 2.
Potentially starting the season 2-0 is the #1 way to ensure that happens.
Yeah.
So our #2 game is also
Do we have this
same.
one the same as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone would have this
So that's
one.
what I was going to say. I think all of the Illini fans have this game. Ohio State.
Yep.
For the second year in a row, you're welcoming in the defending national champions. This year's a little different because, the Michigan weekend last year was amazing, and I'm not discrediting that weekend. But that team was not the Michigan team that won the national championship. This Ohio State team is going to be a lot of that team and the same coach.
I don't think we'll see the same fall off that Michigan had. We have this one on here as one of the biggest games of the year, not because it's the end of the world if you lose it, but because of how big of a deal it is if you win it.
Yes.
Right? It almost is a game that you feel like, and it will depend on what the record is for Illinois at that point, so I'm not saying this is the case, but a game that you feel like you probably go in with not much to lose.
Right.
Illinois will be an underdog in that game, almost certainly. A lot of people will write off the Illini and just kind of chalk it up as an Ohio State win. And you go in and say, we either do what everyone thinks we're going to do, or we surprise a ton of people in a positive way. And the recruiting implications of beating the reigning national champs for a second straight year.
So that's what I was going to say. One of the best things about that Michigan weekend last year, the jerseys, we had
all
CBS
eyes on
Sports
Illinois
here.
football.
Everyone was watching that game, and I think everyone's going to be watching this game because #1, Ohio State. #2, people have a lot of curiosities about this Illinois team. So I think this is another chance to get out on a big stage. Lots of people who are big-time Illini fans are saying, this could finally be the return of College Game Day. This could be your chance to have something like that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We went different on the third game. I'll go first because it's the game right after Ohio State. I think at Washington is a really tough game and a big one. I'm going to be honest, a big one especially, actually either way.
Right.
If you beat Ohio State, you certainly want to carry that momentum forward and say, well, let's not lose to Washington the following week. If you don't beat Ohio State, you just want to avoid 2 losses in a row, especially that middle to late part of the season where you don't want to feel like the wheels are falling off as you're coming down the home stretch. You want to finish strong. So I think that's a huge game regardless of what happens against Ohio State for different reasons, either whether that's carrying the momentum forward or bouncing back. We didn't talk about Washington a lot last year. Because they didn't have their best year, and also Illinois didn't play them, so they weren't on our radar as much. But let's not forget that Washington was a national runner-up 2 years ago.
Right.
You're talking about a really proud program and not an easy place to play.
Not an easy place to play at all. Does, I think, come in the Illini's favor that you get a whole week to rest with the bye week in between Ohio State and Washington. I think that's incredibly helpful.
Right.
My third game is a little bit down the road. It's Rutgers at home. Now, that's not, when you look at the schedule, you're not like, oh, Rutgers.
It doesn't jump off the page at you.
No. Illinois lost 1 over Rutgers by 1 touchdown last year. there. This is your chance to bring in a conference team and show that your win last year didn't come by accident.
And you're talking about, again, that late part of the season where you really want to feel like you're closing strong. After Illinois gets Rutgers at home, you have Maryland at home, you go to Wisconsin, you have Northwestern at home. And so
I also thought about Wisconsin just for the Bielema of it all, but we'll see.
Well, you factor in that Brett Bielema was there, and you factor in they got 3 transfers from there. That will probably be a game with plenty to talk about leading up to. Whether or not it's one of the biggest games on for their season, I don't know. It's certainly probably one of the games with the most storylines, which the local news team loves. All right, we will have a kickoff special on air for you. If you missed this one, I believe you can watch it over and over in the app if you would like to. But we'll have one on air tentatively, I believe the 26th.
August
is the date for
26th
that.
at 6:30. You can tune in on. Remember how we had all our 3 things? That's because you can tune in on Channel 3 and watch us. We'll be breaking everything down, talking to Brett Bielema, other members of the media, previewing this season ahead for the preseason number 12 Fighting Illini football team.
We got all sorts of coverage on air, even outside of that special in our regular newscast. Of course, tons of it online, WCIA.com. If you miss any of it, check back in the act, check on our website. We're giving you tons of fall camp coverage. Of course, we'll keep it coming all year long, and then before we know it, basketball season will be here.
We're looking at, we have the State Farm Center on our other side.
We're standing right between the two, which probably sums up a lot of things. But we appreciate you joining us, and we will see you again here next week for another edition of the Your Illini Nation WCIA 3-in-1 podcast.